What's up? Ghost Fictions is here, and we're back again. This is a story where Izuku was the son of Jack Raiden and had a harem with RWBY team. Izuku, the son of the legendary Raiden, is tasked by his father and his mentor, the legendary Solid Snake, to attend Beacon Academy, which leads to a series of events that will determine the fate of the planet. But before we start, please consider subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. Don't forget to check the description for more informations, and support the amazing author, DevDog756, for writing this story. Now, let's get into the story. Northwest of Vale, 2 years ago. We got our hands on intel that Liquid Snake was involved with the White Fang. The timing was too convenient, but Liquid kept our nose out in the cold for too long. A lone man in a cloak was walking throughout the northwest area of the Kingdom of Vale, with nothing but a cigarette, the sounds of the night, and the sound of the rain pouring down to accompany him. While on the surface, the man was just wandering around aimlessly, but in reality, the man was actually walking towards something. Cool, calm and collected, the man continued on walking while enjoying his smoke before he stopped suddenly, and turned his head to look left. He saw an old, decently sized warehouse in the distance from where he currently was before started to make his way there, being as inconspicuous as he could, which came incredibly natural to him. Making his way to the warehouse, the man was able to see a few masked individuals as he used the nearby trees and bushes to conceal his presence, and took a moment to assess the situation. He noticed a few members of the White Fang, one of the most notable faunus rights groups in the world that in recent years turned to more violent methods outside, as he threw his nearly finished cigarette to distract the guards as he snuck right past them and entered the building through the back. He then quickly found a place to conceal his presence when he could overhear a very familiar voice. Be alert. He'll be here soon, I know it. And be on your guard, he has a lot of tricks up his sleeves. The voice said before going down an elevator, as the man then removed his cloak, revealing his sneaking suit and getting a good look of his face. The man is in fact Remnant's greatest solider and hero, Solid Snake. Snake pulled out his track gun and used it to knock out a few White Fang members, making the coast clear as he hopped onto the codec. It's Snake. Do you read me, Otakon? Loud and clear, Snake. What's the situation? Your intel was spot on as usual. Liquid's involved with the White Fang. It's just as I feared. Liquid's been supplying them with weapons. Though what Liquid gains from this, I have no idea. Whatever it is, it can't be good. Have Izuku and Raiden arrived yet? Yeah, they're making their way in through the roof. Liquid won't get away at this time. Got it, I'm ready to go. Snake cut transmission as he looked at the roof and saw two people drop onto the rafters and dropped in front of Snake, those being one of Snake's closest friends and partner Jack, better known as Raiden, and his son, Izuku. Sorry to keep you waiting, Snake, Raiden said as the trio made their way to the bottom part of the warehouse, avoiding detection from the White Fang members as they made it to the elevator and took it downwards. As it turns out, the warehouse was also doubling as a massive underground facility as the three began their way through the facility, completely maintaining the fact the White Fang don't know they are even there in the first place. They then entered a large area as Snake spotted a lone White Fang member enter a side room before telling Izuku and Raiden to stay put, before making his way into the side room as he snuck up on the White Fang member and caught him in a chokehold. The White Fang member tried to break free from Snake's hold, but was ultimately unable to escape from Snake's hold. The security room, where is it? Snake ordered as the Fang member got more terrified as Snake increased his grip. Spill it, now, Snake said, not in the mood of games, which quickly got the Fang member to cooperate with him. SS second floor, on the right hallway from the elevator right below us, keeping going straight then go left, you can't miss it. The Fang member said as Snake thanked him for his cooperation, before knocking him out cold and made his way back to Izuku and Raiden, as they made their way to the elevator. Meanwhile, deep in the facility, a man with long, flowing blonde hair walked into a large area, filled with lots of White Fang members while he had a bunch of cases being pushed by some of his own men. The man is Snake's clone brother, Liquid Snake. Looks like Christmas came early, boys, Liquid said while laughing as he walked up to one specific member, Adam Taurus. I hope they didn't cause you any trouble, Liquid, Adam said as he and Liquid shook hands. Nonsense. Now let's get to business, Liquid said before snapping his fingers as one of his men brought some of the cases to Adam as he opened it, and was shocked seeing the contents. That's right, Adam, high-tech Atlas weaponry, freshly smuggled I may add, Liquid said with a smug look on his face as Adam just looked surprised. How were you able to smuggle weapons out of Atlas in the first place? Pays to have friends in the right places, Liquid said as he brought another case and opened it in front of Adam, revealing lots of freshly stolen dust. Courtesy of a good friend of mine, Liquid said as the rest of the dust were given to Adam and his men. Meanwhile, Snake, Raiden and Izuku managed to find the security room as they knocked out the one operating it and put him in a nearby locker, before Snake pulled out a drive and plugged it into the console as he, Raiden and Izuku all called Otakon. Otakon, the drive's in place. Great work, Snake. Now time to work my magic, Otakon said as he started to hack into the facility's security system. I still can't believe the White Fang are doing all of this, Izuku said while in complete disbelief over their more recent action. Izuku, people tend to do extremely drastic things to get what they want. Besides, there are other smaller faunus groups doing stuff like this, so it's not out of the ordinary, Otakon explained to his nephew figure. Keyword being smaller, Otakon. The White Fang is basically the biggest faunus rights groups in the planet. Besides, they've been pacifists for years, so why start resorting to violence now? Raiden questioned Otakon as Snake nodded his head in agreement with Raiden. Raiden's got a point, Otakon. The White Fang turning violent will ultimately result in other faunus groups believing that being violent is the better option than being peaceful and civilized, which gives more reason for people to be scared of and hate the faunus. Snake explained, which Raiden, Izuku and Otakon were all in agreement. What even caused the White Fang to go down this path in the first place anyway? Izuku asked as the adults took a moment to think about his question. If I had to guess, most likely a leadership change, Raiden suggested as Snake looked at his partner. Think it was willingly or by force? Hard to say, Snake. I want to say it was a willing change in leadership since it seems the whole White Fang seems to have signed off on this, but I could be wrong. Raiden said as Otakon finished hacking into the security system as he started switching the camera feeds to find where Liquid is. However, they all noticed there were more unconscious White Fang members which raised Snake, Raiden and Izuku's suspension as Otakon continued switching camera feed when they then noticed someone else was there as well, a faunus girl which got Izuku's attention. Whoa, she's really beautiful, Izuku said while being enchanted by her beauty as Raiden chuckled and playfully hit Izuku's shoulder. We need to get an ID on her ASAP, so we can figure out where her alliances lay. Already on it, Snake. I'll get on that right away, Otakon said over the codec as he then switched the camera feed to where Liquid's location is, being in the 6th level of the facility. Gah, Liquid's supplying the White Fang weapons and dust, Snake said with shock while seeing his brother laughing on the security footage. Whatever Liquid's planning with them, it can't be good. Raiden said as the trio made a beeline towards to Liquid's location. After arriving to the 6th level, they saw a massive shutter door while thinking how they were going to get past the door, when they heard someone coming as they all hid and saw the faunus girl from earlier. She walked towards the shutter door and also wondered how she'd get past the door, when she looked to her left, thinking she saw someone there but just saw a box and shrugged it off, before she jumped to an opening in the top part of the area as Snake came out of the box. That was close, Snake said while breathing a sigh of relief as Izuku and Raiden came out of their hiding spots when they got a call from Otakon. Guys, I got an ID on our mystery faunus. Who is she, Otakon? Raiden asked, keen to know who she is. Blake Belladonna. Cute name, Izuku quipped, getting a chuckle from Snake and Raiden. From what I could find, her father started the White Fang, and seems like she was born into the whole thing. Interesting, sounds like she's basically royalty in the Fang. Snake remarked as Izuku then realized something. Wait, if she's part of the White Fang, why is she sneaking around? She should have gotten here before we did. Unless they don't want her to be here, Izuku said as Snake and Raiden took a moment to think before immediately getting onto the same page as Izuku. If she's basically royalty in the Fang, as Snake said, she could blow this whole thing wide open if she wants to, Raiden said as he, Snake and Izuku all looked at each other, all being on the same page on what to do next. Otakon, bring the helicopter over. We're going to need it, Snake said as Izuku jumped up to the same opening Blake did. On it, Snake, Otakon said before hanging up as Snake crawled into a nearby vent while Raiden opened the shutter door before jumping up to Izuku, and went through the opening as several White Fang members checked the area, extremely confused why the shutter door suddenly opened, thinking it was a malfunction. While sneaking through the vent, Snake overheard Liquid talking with Adam as he just glared through the grates while he continued crawling through the vent, while Izuku and Raiden were sneaking in the rafters, also overhearing Liquid and Adam's discussion. How much more weapons are you planning to give us, Liquid? Adam asked as Liquid simply laughed at Adam's question. Enough to transform the White Fang into a proper army, Liquid said, which really piqued Adam's curiosity and gave Snake, Raiden and Izuku a massive sense of dread. Damn you, Liquid, what are you up to now? Snake wondered to himself as he finished crawling through the vent as he crouched behind a stack of boxes to conceal his location, while still listening to Liquid and Atom. Once things have been finalized, we'll launch a massive, large-scale attack on Atlas, Liquid said as Izuku, Snake and Raiden's hearts all dropped, while Atom was surprised with Liquid's declaration. You're kidding, Atom said in shock as Liquid simply shook his head. I never kid, my friend. Besides, you all have suffered because of Atlas, them constantly treating all faunus as nothing but slaves, and only caring about themselves, not knowing what it's truly like to suffer. But that will all change, Liquid said as all the White Fang members were all taken aback but were quickly on board with Liquid. Not that I don't want the Schnee Dust Company to fall, but what about Atlas military? Atom asked, understandably being considered about the pushback, but Liquid just laughed. Ha 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 ha, oh please. General Ironwood and his ace ops are not even close to being a threat. Hell, they should be called simulated soldiers. They have no ounce of warrior's pride, no idea what it's like to truly fight in a warrior. The only one of them worth a single damn is just a girl with daddy issues. And do remember, Atlas did create me after all, Liquid said while laughing with a smug look on his face, as Atom got a sadistic smirk on his face. Snake was about to show himself when Blake unintentionally gave herself away, before putting her hands up and showing herself. Blake, Atom said in complete shock at her being there as Liquid looked at him with an amused look on his face. Friend of yours, Atom, Liquid said with a snarky tone. I'm her mentor, Atom said as Liquid just laughed in amusement, while Blake just looked at Atom. Atom, why are you doing all this? Blake asked, feeling all kinds of feelings flowing through her mind, mainly sadness and betrayal. What else, Blake? I'm doing this for our people. And this gentleman here is the only human I can trust, Atom said, hoping to get through to Blake, but that was ultimately not to come to pass. Atom, you do know that's Liquid Snake, one of, if not the greatest criminal and terrorist in Remnant's history, Blake said as Liquid just smirked. You've done your homework, kitty, I'm impressed. And if you think about it, you are all terrorists as well, so we're not too different, Liquid said with a shit-eating grin on his face as Blake just shook her head. And no, we're doing this for the sake of all faunus. You do what you do just to satisfy your urge for madness and bloodlust, Blake snapped back at Liquid, only for the blonde snake to laugh. Ha ha ha, you think I'm just another lunatic who seeks mindless chaos and violence. No, I want to create a world where soldiers are always needed and will always have a place. Liquid explained to the faunus girl as Snake, Raiden and Izuku were all ready to attack at any moment. That's just what Big Boss wanted. Why do you want to do that? Blake asked as Liquid glared at her. To surpass, humiliate, and stick it to my father, have him rolling in his grave that his inferior son succeeded where he failed. Me, not my superior and perfect brothers, Liquid ranted to Blake when Snake finally revealed himself. Liquid, Snake yelled to Liquid as he, his men and the White Fang members all looked at the legendary soldier. Snake, glad you could join us, brother, Liquid said, with a lot of excitement in his voice when Izuku and Raiden dropped down in front of Blake to protect her. You brought your friends, Snake, Liquid said as Snake aimed his gun at his twin. Stand down, Liquid. Ha 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 ha, you and your friends are outnumbered, Snake. Liquid taunted Snake, only for him to smirk. I like those odds, Snake said before throwing a smoke grenade, blinding the whole room as Izuku and Raiden made it to Snake with Blake in tow as they looked behind them, seeing an exit as Raiden looked at Izuku. Get her out of her, Raiden said to Izuku as he opened the exit and pushed Izuku and Blake inside before closing it again. Dad, what about you two? Izuku asked through the door, obviously worried about Raiden and Snake's well-being. We'll be fine, now go. Otakon will be here soon to get us out of here. We'll be right behind you. Raiden shouted back as Izuku knew he couldn't talk them into letting him help. Come on, Izuku said to Blake as he grabbed her hand before running towards the surface while Blake was definitely confused to say the least. Wait, what's going on, and who are you? Blake asked while she and Izuku were running. My name's Izuku Midoriya, and it's a bit of a long story to why we're here, but to sum it up, we were here for Liquid. Izuku explained to Blake, who then quickly pieced things together. You're the son of Raiden, the lightning bolt, Blake said with shock and awe in her voice. That's what some people like to call my dad, Izuku said as he and Blake kept on running towards the surface. Back with Raiden and Snake, the two were in the middle of a massive fight, while Snake was fighting Liquid as Raiden fought the White Fang members and Liquid's men. Snake and Liquid were on a higher elevation, while they kept throwing punch after punch at the other, quickly getting all bloody and injured as Snake threw Liquid into the ground and punched him in the face, disorienting Liquid for a moment before he tripped up Snake and kicked him in the face. "Nice try, Snake," Liquid mocked Snake before immediately getting kicking in the chest by Snake. Raiden was holding his own against all his enemies as he was dodging and deflecting all the attacks from the weapons Liquid brought the White Fang, before Adam tried pulling a fast one of Raiden as the two traded sword strikes. "You're fighting a losing battle, give up and we will spare your lives," Raiden said as he pushed Adam back before taking down a few Fang members, before he and Adam clashed again. "I'm not letting a cold-blooded killer get in my way," Adam snapped to Raiden, only for Raiden to smirk. "Talk about the pot calling the kettle black," Raiden said as he pulled Adam back as one of Adam's men grabbed some lightning dust and threw it at Raiden, hoping it'd incapacitate him, only for Raiden to absorb the lightning, to all of their surprise. Adam then smirked as he went to use his semblance on Raiden after absorbing enough energy into his sword as he managed to disarm Raiden, and went to attack him as he swung his sword toward Raiden. Only for Raiden to stop Adam's attack by grabbing his sword with his hand, completely shocking Adam as Raiden kicked him back and grabbed his blade. Snake continued throwing hands with Liquid as he slammed him downwards, before seeing Raiden getting surrounded as he pulled a very lethal gun, and fired shots at two of the open cases of dust, causing an explosion that took out a good amount of their enemies. Liquid then tackled Snake and gave a motion to get the rest of the dust and weapons out of there as some of his men and Adams got the dust and weapons away, as Snake kicked Liquid off him, causing him to fall to the ground when he got a message from Otakon. 5 minutes. Snake smirked as he jumped and landed onto Liquid to soften the fall as Raiden Aslo got Otakon's message when Snake shot the lights out, as he and Raiden ran to the exit while blocking the path for good measure. "Get them," Adam ordered as Snake and Raiden made a run for it as Snake left behind a stun grenade for good measure, giving him and Raiden enough time and space to run to the surface. "Had I known in advance how messy this would get, I would have asked Summer, Tai and Crow for backup," Raiden said as he and Snake kept on booking it. On the surface, Izuku and Blake were fighting off several White Fang members while waiting for Otakon to arrive, and for Snake and Raiden to catch up with them as Izuku and Blake were working pretty well together. Blake used her semblance to trip up a few of their enemies as Izuku blasted them with a bolt of lightning, which impressed Blake. "Hey, people don't call my dad Mr. Lightning Bolt for no reason," Izuku quipped to Blake as they got to higher ground when they heard a helicopter nearby as Izuku smiled. "Sorry to keep you waiting, Izuku," Otakon said as Izuku just chuckled and shook his head as he looked at Blake and held out his hand, which Blake took since she owes Izuku for helping keep her alive, as he picked her up and jumped onto the helicopter. Izuku and Blake strapped themselves in as Snake and Raiden made it to the surface and quickly boarded the helicopter. "Till next time, fellas," Raiden said as he closed the helicopter's door before taking off as Adam and Liquid made it to the surface, and Adam was angry they got away while Liquid just smirked. "Looks like the game is back on, brother," Liquid said in his mind as Adam looked to him. "What do we do now, Liquid? If Blake goes back to the rest of the White Fang with the knowledge of our alliance, that will completely blow our plan apart," Adam said, getting slightly panicked with the situation as Liquid put his hand on his shoulder. "I think you know what you did to do," Liquid said, which Adam immediately knew what he was getting at as he shook his head. "No, I can't kill one of my own kind, Liquid. That'll make me no better than the rest of humanity." "Well, then you'll have to come up with something that will keep her away. You should be able to do that easily, you're a pretty charismatic person. Now let's relocate our supplies elsewhere. I have no doubt Snake will contact the authorities," Liquid said as he went back inside to get started on the cleanup as Adam looked at the retreating helicopter, all kinds of feelings flowing through his mind before walking back inside. While in the helicopter, Blake was trying her best not to freak out over being in the presence of two legendary figures, as she saw Izuku's mask retract, letting his hair fall down and letting her get a good look at Izuku's face. Blake blushed slightly seeing Izuku's face while also noticing his silver eyes before Snake snapped her out of it. "What were you doing there anyway?" Snake asked as the young faunus girl, which immediately caught her attention as she sat up straight, getting a chuckle from Snake. "Well, I noticed some of the White Fang with weapons that we couldn't reasonably get our hands on, and I didn't get an answer from any I asked, even Adam, which made me think something was up, but I had no idea it would be like this," Blake said while slightly tearing up. "Part of me knew we'd be crossing lots of lines going down a violent path, but declaring war on Atlas, none of us signed up for that. Maybe I should have left with my parents when I had the chance," Blake said while her tears started to get more noticeable when Otakon then spoke up. "Regretting what you've done isn't going to fix things, you know. I've made plenty of mistakes in my life, and most of them I just wallowed in self-misery, until I eventually stopped letting the past define my life and actually got to work on fixing my mistakes," Otakon said to Blake, getting a little smile from Snake. Look, you all did what you thought was the best course of your kind, but if any of you took a moment to think about the long-term consequences, you would have realized this would make you know better than the people who actively hates all fairness. Raiden said, and Blake knew that Raiden was 100% right in his words. But it's not too late to make things right. We can help you, Izuku said, with lots of hope and optimism in his voice as Blake wiped her tears away and smiled at him. After a while of flying, they landed in Patch as they exited the helicopter and entered Raiden's home as Snake flopped onto the couch. Let's hope your mother doesn't lose her mind if she comes home early. God knows she does that enough whenever Yang and RWBY are over, Raiden said to Izuku as they removed their cybernetic suits. Who's Yang and RWBY? Blake asked as Izuku and Raiden sat down while Otakon got himself and the others drinks. Childhood friends of mine, Izuku said when he heard familiar voices behind him and chuckled. Speak of the devil. Hey Izuku, Yang and RWBY said with lots of joy as the two girls hugged him, while Yang took notice of Blake. Who's that? Oh, that's Blake Belladonna. Ran into her on our mission. Blake, these are Yang and RWBY, Izuku said as Blake shook Yang and RWBY's hands when Snake immediately shot up. Oh damn, I forgot me and Crow were supposed to go to a bar tonight, Snake said in a panic as he ran upstairs to get changed, making Izuku, Otakon and Raiden laugh. That happened often, Blake said while giggling a bit. Too often, Otakon said in between his laughter. Otakon was logging all the information Snake, Raiden and Izuku learned while on their mission while understandably being concerned about the implications of Liquid's plan. Otakon knew from constantly dealing with Liquid over the years that there's far more to it than just attacking Atlas, which is up to speculation as to what else he's planning at the moment. And then there's the matter of how the White Fang fits into Liquid's plan. Is he going to make them part of his army, have them be an independent third party, or what? Lots of things were flowing through Otakon's mind as Raiden came into the room and sat beside him. So, what do you think Liquid's angle is? Hard to say, Raiden, but we all know it's not as clear as Liquid destroying Atlas. Of course, all other variables are yet to be seen. Plus, doesn't help that Liquid definitely has corrupt officials, soldiers and members of the Schnee Dust Company, if not the whole company on his payroll. Otakon said as Raiden nodded his head in agreement. Makes sense, otherwise how else would Liquid have weapons and dust smuggled out of Atlas without no one getting suspicious? Raiden said, knowing the fact it's not much of a secret that Atlas has plenty of issues. Exactly, plus doesn't help the White Fang might end up being a real problem down the line. Otakon said as Raiden turned around in his chair. I talked with Blake for a bit, and she told me that the White Fang members she saw being armed were part of the Veil branch, which Adam's on charge of. So as of now, war with the whole White Fang doesn't seem to be on the table, but I could be wrong, Raiden explained as Otakon felt a temporary moment of relief and readjusted his glasses, when his scroll vibrated as he picked it up. That your girlfriend or something, Raiden quipped, clearly joking when he noticed Otakon faintly blush, which absolutely shocked him. No way, I was just joking. Who's the lucky lady? Raiden asked, very happy for Otakon as he patted his friend on the back. Well, it's Naomi, Otakon said before Raiden shot up as his jaw dropped. Dr. Hunter, how'd you manage to pull that off? Raiden asked, in absolute shock and disbelief at this discovery. Well, we were working on a project together last month, and one just thing led to another. Otakon admitted, rather sheepishly as Raiden lightly slapped him on the back. No need to be embarrassed, man, good for you, Raiden said, congratulating his friend as the two men smiled and shared a laugh. Meanwhile, Izuku was in the middle of intense training as he was holding a sword in his right hand, and a gun in his left as he then back-flipped over his virtual opponents, and quickly went on the offensive. Izuku swung his blade with lots of concentration, aggression and precision as his blade cut through his enemies with ease, while he also blocked and dodged seamlessly. Izuku then pushed them back before throwing his sword into the air as he began shooting his opponents right in the head, while constantly rolling out of the way of the enemy strikes, landing solid shots before bouncing off one of them and grabbed his blade with his foot in mid-air. Izuku then dove his blade down into an opponent before spinning around in a circle, letting his blade cut through multiple enemies at once. Izuku readjusted his position as he reloaded his gun, and the moment he finished reloading, he bashed his fist through the chest of one of his virtual opponents, then channeling electricity into his blade before slamming it into the ground, causing a massive shockwave that took down the rest of his enemies. Izuku took a moment to catch his breath as the simulation wrapped up, while he sheathed his sword and put away his gun before taking off his shirt, which really caught Yang and Blake's eyes due to them watching Izuku train the whole time. Wow, Blake said with a massive blush on her face, looking at Izuku's shirtless form. I know, Izuku has a body that could put gods to shame, Yang said while keeping her eyes on Izuku, drooling a little bit as Blake took notice of several scars Izuku has. And while Blake won't admit it out loud, the scars kind of did it for her. All those scars he has, Blake said, focusing on some of Izuku's scars, wondering how and why he got them, which Yang took notice of. Izuku's a fighter, has been since RWBY and I were little kids. Kind of expected when your father's one of the greatest warriors in the planet's history, Yang explained to Blake, as Izuku stretched his arms and legs and headed off to change. He was training for over an hour. How was he able to do that? Blake asked, being understandably surprised how long Izuku was able to train for. That's nothing. The longest Izuku's trained so far is 3.5 hours. As for why Izuku trains so often and hard, I don't know honestly. Guess when you're exposed to battle for long enough, it's hard for your mind to be anywhere else. Yang said to Blake, while Izuku finished getting changed as he saw his reflection in a nearby mirror but with red eyes, before quickly shaking his head. Izuku's reflection was back to normal as he left the change room and walked towards Blake and Yang. I see you two enjoyed the show, Izuku said, which surprised Yang and Blake, making the two girls blush while he chucked. Man Yang, it's getting easier and easier to make you flustered. You're losing your edge, Golden Dragon, Izuku said while chuckling, making Yang more flustered when Blake asked something that surprised them both. So, is it true that Snake was trained by Big Boss? Blake asked, which surprised Izuku, since he was under the impression it was common knowledge that Snake was trained by Big Boss. Well, I'm not privy to all the details, but yes. Snake did train under Big Boss during his time in Foxhound. I'm surprised you didn't know. I thought that was extremely common knowledge. Izuku said as Blake and Yang left the training area and went to the living room. As the girls sat down with Izuku got something to drink. Well, when stories get passed around enough times, it gets hard to tell which parts actually happened and which parts didn't. Once I heard that Big Boss had a body double, Blake said as Izuku came with water for all three of them as he sat down. Given all the things Big Boss did throughout his later years in life, I wouldn't be surprised if that were actually true. Izuku said as he took a sip of his drink while Blake noticed a photo on the table as she got a closer look at it. She saw Raiden, Snake and Otakon standing alongside a woman who Blake noted looks very identical to RWBY, a man with spiky black hair and a man with blonde hair, with all of them smiling. Meanwhile, Snake was at a bar with Crow, the uncle of RWBY and Yang, as the two men were enjoying their drinks, and just having a good old time together, not as a soldier or huntsman, but as men. Oh, that's the good stuff. Can't remember the last time we had the chance to just unwind and relax, Crow said, slightly slurring his words as he took another sip of his beer. During Ty and Summer's anniversary last year, Snake said to Crow, with a chuckle and a smug grin on his face. Smartass, Crow said while laughing as he and Snake finished their drinks, leading to him asking for 2 more before turning to face Snake. So Snake, what's our plan about your crazy brother? Crow asked Snake, as the legendary mercenary took a moment to think. Stop Liquid before his plans can get any further, what else? And plus, it's not like Liquid's going to be able to pull off his full plan anytime soon since he can't get his hands on a new Metal Gear. Oh yeah? It's been like 10 years since the last of things were created. Think we should give Ironwood the heads up. Better safe than sorry, no doubt Liquid's going to have multiple backup plans. Snake said as he and Crow were given their beer, as the two men thanked the person who brought them. Thought the one thing about Liquid's plan that sticks out like a sore thumb is how the White Fang fits into it. Snake wondered as he and Crow opened their beers and took drinks of them, while trying to guess what the White Fang has to gain from working with Liquid. Meanwhile, Adam was in the middle of telling the rest of the White Fang that Blake had betrayed them, by going to Snake and Raiden with the mission of killing him. Adam was hoping to God that they would fall for his lie, which most of the White Fang seemingly did, mostly due to Adam's charismatic and importance in the group. Though there was understand doubt given Blake's dedication to their cause, but there was nothing they could do about it. Of course now, Adam had to hope that both Blake's parents and the High Leader, Sienna Khan, absolutely believe his lie as he went to an extremely private area, before contacting Liquid. Well, how did it go? They all fell for it. As far as they're all concerned, Blake is a traitor, Adam said, being pleased with himself. You do know our plans are at risk as long as that girl still lives, right? Liquid asked, waiting to get an answer from Adam. We won't have to worry about Blake, she won't bother coming back. Every time there was any problems in her life, she ends up running away. She always runs away, just like her parents, Adam said, hoping his answer would satisfy Liquid. If you say so, Adam. But if you ever come across her again, you best be ready to pull the trigger. I'll let you know when our plan is ready to proceed. Liquid out. Back in Vale. Izuku, Blake and Yang were all in the middle of playing a video game while RWBY was reading and eating some cookies, and Izuku was cleaning Blake and Yang's clocks. Wow, you were not this good last time we played this, Izuku, Yang said with a lot of shock and frustration in her voice. Practice makes perfect, my dear. Plus, I might have had a lot of matches with John, Izuku said with a little smirk on his face as he beat the two girls in the game, and did a little dance to celebrate. No fair, Izuku, if I were at full form, I'd have you on your knees, Yang said, as Izuku smirked and got close to her face. Well, that can definitely still be arranged, Izuku said with a smooth tone in his voice which made Yang, Blake and RWBY all blush hearing that, before Izuku chuckled a bit. No wonder you liked teasing me when we were little, Yang. It's fun, Izuku said as Yang playfully punched Izuku's shoulder before Blake stood up. Mind if I use your shower? Oh, sure. First room you see when you get to the second floor, Izuku said as Blake smiled before heading upstairs, while Izuku and Yang couldn't help but get a look at Blake's butt. Holy moly, that's an ass if I've ever seen one, Izuku said to himself while Blake couldn't even come up with words as they were both blushing. After a little bit, Blake came back downstairs after finishing her shower as she sat down with Izuku and Yang while smiling at them, being grateful for their kindness. You didn't have to do this for me, Blake said as Izuku and Yang just chuckled. Oh, nonsense, Blake, Izuku said, which made Blake smile more and also made her blush slightly. Hey, you know what we should do? We should head out and have some fun, Yang said as Izuku, Blake and RWBY looked at her. You sure that's a good idea, Yang? It is getting a bit dark out, RWBY said, not wanting to worry their parents. Mom and Dad know we're responsible on our own roofs. Besides, we have our lightning rod to keep us safe, Yang said as she grabbed Izuku's arm and traced a circle on his chest, making him blush. Well, I'm not against it, but what if we run into anyone who hates faunus? Blake said, being understandably worried about that possibility. Oh yeah, that's a fair worry. Granted, faunus discrimination is pretty low in Vale, but doesn't mean it doesn't exist here, and us three have the dishonor of knowing someone who absolutely hates the faunus, Izuku said before he went to grab something, quickly returning as he places something on Blake's head. Blake looked at what Izuku placed on her head as she saw a black bow on her head, hiding her cat ears. There we go, now no one will be none the wiser, Izuku said with a smile as Blake was touched by Izuku's idea, as Raiden and Otakon came downstairs. Hey Dad, we're going to head out for a bit, Izuku said as he and the girls got up and started getting ready. Alright, just be careful, Raiden said as Izuku gave his father a nod before he, Yang, RWBY and Blake headed to the door and opened it, but were surprised to see someone at the door. Naomi, what are you doing here? Otakon asked as Izuku, Yang and RWBY all did triple takes as Naomi let herself in. I thought I'd surprise you, Hal, Naomi said as Otakon blushed while Izuku, Yang and RWBY all comically fell backwards, while Blake was confused. Have fun tonight, Uncle Hal, Izuku said. Blake helped him, Yang and RWBY up as they immediately left the house. Who was that girl with the bow? Naomi asked, not knowing who Blake is. Well, it's a long story, Otakon said as Raiden turned around and headed upstairs. I'll leave you two alone, better not be creating any nieces and nephews, Raiden said while laughing as he headed upstairs, leaving Otakon blushing. I see you told Raiden about us. Well, yeah? I haven't told Snake, Tai, Summer and Crow yet though, but knowing Snake, he probably knows already, Otakon explained, sheepishly as he and Naomi sat down. Izuku, Yang, RWBY and Blake made it to the more populated area of Patch while laughing and having a good time together. Well, I didn't see that coming, RWBY said, still being surprised learning about Otakon and Naomi. Same with me, Rubes. Honestly, I thought that Snake and Hal were gay for each other, Yang said, also still in shock. Well, good for Uncle Hal, Izuku said, being very happy for his uncle as Blake unknowingly grabbed Izuku's hand, which Yang saw and got jealous as she grabbed Izuku's other hand, while RWBY grabbed his arm. Izuku was blushing like crazy over the girls being this close to him, but he was fine with it as he let them keep on doing it. I get the feeling this will end up being a reoccurring thing with them. Izuku, Yang, Blake and RWBY were out on the town, and Blake was having fun despite not having done anything this before, least on her own violation. Though Blake was still worried about her being a faunus causing problems, but being around Izuku, RWBY and Yang made her feel calm as they did multiple different things while hanging out. Blake also quickly noticed plenty of people saying hi to Izuku, which he said hi back, which made Blake realize Izuku must be relatively popular in Patch. Seems like Izuku's pretty well liked, Blake said to Yang. It's just who Izuku is. It pays to be nice, kind, and friendly. Though there is one person who hates Izuku's guts more than anything, but he's not worth talking about. Yang said, which did make Blake slightly curious to who Yang was talking about, but didn't pay it too much mind when they saw two more of their friends, which made Izuku, RWBY, and Yang smile. Hey Momo, Kyoka, Izuku said as Yang ran up to the two girls and hugged them. Sup girls, Yang said as Momo and Kyoka took notice of Blake and their curiosity were quickly raised. Momo, Kyoka, this is Blake Belladonna. Blake, that's Momo Yayorozu and Kyoka Jiro, good friends of yours, RWBY said, introducing the three to each other as Momo and Blake shook hands. Momo and Blake started a conversation with each other, as Izuku noticed RWBY handing something to him. What's this, RWBY? Izuku asked as he accepted RWBY's gift as he realized it was a cookie. It's a special cookie I made with Mom's help. I hope you like it, Izuku, RWBY said as Izuku ate the cookie RWBY made for him. Wow, this is amazing, RWBY. Thanks, Izuku said, which made RWBY smile at Izuku's praise. Thanks, Izuku, RWBY said as she hugged Izuku with a big OL smile on her adorable face. Meanwhile, PTFFFFFFF, haha. You're kidding, Hal, Naomi said as she took a sip of the wine she and Otakon were having. I'm not Naomi. Snake had the shot lined up, and Crow kept telling him he couldn't make it no matter how good of a shot he is. Then he fired the shot, and it bounced off the walls a few times before hitting the target dead on, which led to Snake giving him a smug grin, Otakon said while trying to keep his laughter under control. Crow's the one who's always drunk, right? Naomi asked as Otakon just nodded his head. It's honestly surprising that Crow hasn't gotten alcohol poisoning yet. Ever since I first met him, he's always drunk in some capacity. Otakon said while Naomi was in complete shock. He's not kidding, Crow is always drunk in some way. How he's not got alcohol poisoning, I have no idea. Raiden said as he came downstairs and grabbed himself a drink. That and how he's still able to function relatively normal while wasted, Raiden said, completely nonchalantly while Naomi was still in shock. Is that man an anomaly? Naomi asked, still in disbelief of what she was hearing as Otakon and Raiden just shrugged their shoulders. Guess it'd be a bad time to also mention Crow can turn into a bird. Raiden mentioned as Naomi comically fell backwards, before getting back up. Okay, now you're both messing with me. There's no way a man can just transform into a bird. Naomi said before realizing they were being 100% serious. Oh my god, you're both being serious. How? That shouldn't be scientifically possible, Naomi said, getting a deadpan look from Raiden and Otakon. Snake's been able to destroy who knows how many Metal Gears alone, Summer and I can blast special anti-grim light from our eyes. Izuku's friends with someone who can create illusions that everyone can see, and I can lift way more than most normal people. But Crow turning into a bird is what you can't believe, Raiden questioned as Naomi did feel a bit silly giving most people on the planet do impossible things on a regular basis, as Otakon for up to get a drink as Naomi noticed a picture, as she got a better look at it. The picture was of Otakon when he was very young with his biological mother. Hal, Naomi said to herself under her breath before moving back to where she was originally sitting, not sure if she should ask Otakon about his mother or not. Meanwhile, another one of the White Fang's hideouts were under siege as several goons were trying to fight off their uninvited guest, and were met with two blades repelling all their attacks, while the mysterious figure was dodging like it was nothing. The hell is up with this guy? One of the White Fang asked as he got behind cover. You don't think it's Solid Snake, is it? Another White Fang goon asked as she reloaded her weapon. But Solid Snake doesn't use swords, does he? A third member of the White Fang asked. He doesn't, the figure stated as they walked out of the shadows, revealing their face as all the White Fang members present all panicked when they saw who it was. Shit, it's Solidus Snake. The same Solidus Snake who trained Jack the Ripper. Guilty as charged. Now then, surrender or else I'll have to be a bit uncivilized, Solidus said as a White Fang member in black tried to pull a fast one on Solidus by using the fact he can't see in his left eye. However, Solidus saw it coming, and dodged the surprise attack as he grabbed his surprise attacker and held him with one of his blades at his neck. I want information, tell me what I want to know, otherwise I'll kill everyone here, Solidus threatened as the White Fang members considered their options before laying down their arms. Smart decision. Now, what's your connection with Liquid Snake? Solidus demanded right when he heard Liquid's voice. Temper, brother, Liquid said with a smug and condescending tone in his voice while Solidus looked around in an attempt to locate him. Where are you, Liquid? Who knows, Solidus? Maybe I'm nearby, maybe I'm far away at this moment. Cut the dramatics, Liquid. Why are you working with the White Fang? Solidus demanded, wanting answers from Liquid. See, you picked up snakes disregarded for manners, Liquid said, completely dodging the question. Answer the question, Liquid. I'm not in the mood for games. Solidus shouted, getting fed up with Liquid. If you must know, Solidus, we have common interests, Liquid said, which confused Solidus. What? How does an extremist rights group fit into your plan? Solidus asked, not seeing a reasonable explanation for the connection between Liquid and the White Fang. All it took was the right circumstances and some coincidences to get Adam to see things from my point of view. Once I get you, Snake and Raiden out of the way, I'll continue our father's dream and rebuild Outer Heaven, Liquid exclaimed. What about all the huntsmen and huntresses that would come after you, Liquid? Solidus asked. Oh, they'll be too busy with the hordes of Grimm that would come about. Besides, the more Grimm, the more work they'll have. And from that point of view, am I really doing the wrong thing? After all, huntsmen and huntresses aren't that different from men like us, Liquid stated. What about all the people who just want to live normal lives? Solidus questioned while shouting at Liquid. Well, they better get a head start on training or else die, Liquid said while laughing like a madman as Solidus clenched his blades. That won't happen, Liquid, especially without any Metal Gear in the picture, Solidus said, which got Liquid laughing harder. We'll just see about that, Liquid said as his voice cut off, right when Solidus felt a massive volt of electricity flow through his body, as one of his suit's arms grabbed his surprise attacker and slammed them against the wall. The electricity stopped flowing through Solidus as he stood before the White Fang members as he held his swords tight. Time to show you why I am Big Boss's perfect son, Solidus said as he grabbed the White Fang member he held at sword point and threw him at the few in front of him, then used his suit's arms to grab the weapons of the ones behind him and crush them. Using the increased speed the suit grants him, Solidus rushed the two members behind him, causing them to be sent backwards into the wall, rendering them unconscious upon impact as more White Fang rushed in. Solidus then rushed towards them and began to fight them off. Solidus swung his blades to block the attacks coming his way while also staying on the move in order to keep his opponents on their toes. And one by one, Solidus began to incapacitate his enemies. He used his suit's arms to grab two members before swinging them around as a makeshift tornado, sending most other members back, before grabbing one by the neck and chocked her unconscious as he blocked a shot from another. Solidus then threw his sword at the one who tried to shoot him, causing him to dodge the blade as Solidus rushed and disarmed him before knocking him out, before using the gun to fire at loose objects, furthering the speed it took to take out the White Fang members. After a while, Solidus was down to the last standing member, a female wolf fauness with a blade, who put up a decent fight against Solidus as the two engaged in a sword clash which she managed to get on up over Solidus as she pushed him back, then punched him in his left eye, which did nothing as Solidus gave a little smirk before disarming his opponent and knocked her out cold. I was expecting far better, Solidus said as he noticed a file that one of the unconscious White Fang members had in their possession, as Solidus grabbed it and took a look through its contents. Solidus then closed the file as he took out a cigar and started smoking it as he walked out of the hideout, satisfied with what he's found. Back with Izuku. Momo and Blake were both in a very deep conversation about all the books that they love while Izuku, Yang, RWBY and Kyoka were sitting on a nearby bench. Well, looks like Momo got a book buddy, Izuku said while chuckling while watching Blake and Momo talk. Yep, I have the feeling Momo and Blake will get along great, Kyoka said as she smiled seeing how happy Momo is while RWBY was happily eating a cookie. Yeah, I had that feeling when we met her, Yang said while giving RWBY head pats while she was eating her cookie as Kyoka looked at Izuku. How'd you meet her anyway, Greenie? Kyoka asked as Izuku had a sheepish look on his face. Heh, it's a bit of a long story, Kyoka, Izuku said when they all heard a voice they really didn't want to hear. Oh, Deku. Oh, great. It's him, Izuku and Yang said with a lot of annoyance as they turned to see who the voice came from. Katsuki Bakugo. The hell do you want, Sparky? Izuku asked, already being fed up with Bakugo being around them as Yang got up. Who's that? Blake asked Momo while whispering to her. Katsuki Bakugo, one of the worst people we've ever met. He hates Izuku more than anything for whatever reason and thinks he's better than everyone because of his quirk, Momo whispered to Blake as she realizes Bakugo's the one Yang mentioned earlier. Me, the fuck are you doing here, you freak? Bakugo shouted at Izuku as they covered their ears due to Bakugo's screeching. I was hanging out with my friends, then you had to show up and ruin it, Izuku said with a deadpan tone in his voice as Bakugo noticed Blake beside Momo. What the fuck's the deal with that emo bitch? Another pebble in New York road to greatness. Bakugo said with a smug grin as Momo got between him and Blake. She's none of your concern, mutt, Momo said as Blake was shocked Momo was standing up for her so quickly. Grrr, fuck off ponytail, Bakugo barked at Momo while clenching his fist, while Momo just smirked. Touch me and I'll arrange for your life to be ruined, my family is the second most influential family in Remnant. But then again, you're already ruining your life just fine, Momo said with a smirk as Bakugo tried to attack Momo, thinking she was bluffing. Suddenly, Blake got in front of Momo, grabbed Bakugo's fist, jabbed her elbow into his face 2 times, tripped him up, grabbed his arm and slammed him into the ground. What the fuck just happened? What even this that emo bitch? Bakugo thought to himself, getting livid being humiliated. Whoa, nice job Blake. Didn't think I'd see the mutt get his ass beat so fast. Yan said as Bakugo got up as he glared at Blake. You got lucky emo bitch, Bakugo barked at Blake as he dusted himself off. Please, I've dealt with way worse than some mutt with an inferiority complex. Blake said when they noticed a news report on a nearby TV as they saw it was about the white fawn, making Blake a bit uneasy. TCH, those faunus freaks. Doing all this just to get attention, Bakugo said, while laughing at his hate for the faunus as the group just glared at him. The hell's your problem with the faunus? Yan yelled at Bakugo, trying her best not to just deck Bakugo across the face. They're freaks, just like anyone with a semblance. The faunus are only good for being slaves, along with powerless people. Bakugo stated, which got him lots of looks from people passing by, looks of disdain for the Pomeranian as they talked shit about him under their breaths. It's people like you that made the white fawn do this, you know. Constantly pushing them around, treating them like slaves, Blake spoke out, clenching her fist while glaring Bakugo in the eyes. Well, they shouldn't have been freaks. They're lucky to even be alive, Bakugo said with an evil look on his face. You say faunus are freaks yet the quirk factor is basically a birth defect if you think about it. So by your logic, people with quirks are freaks as well, RWBY said as Bakugo turned around as explosions sparked in his hand as he glared at RWBY. The fuck did you call me, rosy bitch? Bakugo barked before he tried to launch an explosion at RWBY, only for Izuku to grab his wrist and put lots of pressure on it. Bring any harm to RWBY, and I'll make you thoroughly regret it, Izuku said, with venom in his voice as Bakugo noticed Izuku's eyes turned red for a moment. Izuku pushed Bakugo to the ground as he got back up and tried to hurt RWBY again when he spotted someone, and immediately was scared shitless. Cinder. RWBY and Yan said enjoy? Leave my little sisters alone, mutt, Cinder said as she glared daggers at Bakugo as sparks formed around her hand, making the mutt scared as he ran off. All bark and no bite like usual, Cinder said as RWBY and Yang hugged her. Are you okay RWBY? Cinder asked, concerned about RWBY's well-being. I'm fine big sis, Izuku stopped him from hurting me. RWBY said with a smile as Cinder ruffled her hair. I'm stupid for thinking he'd ever learn his lesson. Even after all the times me, RWBY and Izuku showed him up, he still thinks we're below him. Yang said while rolling her eyes. People like him never learn young. No matter how many times he gets humbled, he's still delusional enough to think he's better than everyone in the planet. Cinder said as she pinched her cheek, making her pout. Ain't no way he'll make it into Beacon with that attitude, Izuku said when he noticed another familiar face. Hey Neo, Izuku said as she walked to him and hugged him. I'm seeing a pattern here, Blake said to Momo who chuckled. Yeah, Izuku's got a habit of getting along with girls. Not that he doesn't have any male friends, he has John, Kirishima, Shoto and Denki, Momo explained to Blake. You'd be surprised how many times Snake jokes about that. Yang said while giggling, making Izuku roll his eyes. What, you jealous Yang? Izuku said with a little smirk on his face, making Yang blush slightly as the others giggled before walking off together. I can't help it, okay, it just happens, Izuku said as Kyoka playfully hit his shoulder. She's just busting your chops greenie, Kyoka said with a smile, while Yang subtly moved her hand to Izuku's and gently grabbed it. His hands are soft, Yang said to herself as Blake grabbed his other hand, with a faint blush on her face as well. He's so gentle, even after all the fights he's been through. Blake thought to herself as Cinder and Neo both felt slightly jealous as they kept walking. Meanwhile, Liquid was in a hidden base as he was holding a flash drive as he plugged it into a computer. Alright Ozpin, let's see what you're hiding, Liquid said as he began looking through the drive when he received a transmission. Ah, Vamp. How's our friends over in Atlas? Liquid questioned as he waited for Vamp to relay his information. We still have their full cooperation, Vamp relayed to Liquid, making the blonde snake smirk. Good, very good to hear. How are things down in Nistral? A bit messy if I'm being honest, boss. She seems to be causing a little mess down there, Vamp said to Liquid as he pinched the arc of his nose. I had the feeling this would happen eventually. Have more men keep an eye on her and have them report the moment she shows any signs of betraying us. Understood, boss, but what about the twins? Leave them be, they are none the wiser about their mother's involvement with us. No need to risk compromising Black Chamber operations. Besides, we can always use them as leverage, Liquid said as the transmission ended as Liquid looked through the drive when he laid eyes on something that raised his curiosity. Project G Omega. Present day. Blake was in the Forever Fall forest, sitting on a rock whilst reading and reflecting on the last 2 years of her life. Blake got used to being around Izuku, his family and his little group. And while not being too open about it, Blake was definitely grateful for all of them. A few days after first meeting Izuku, she met the rest of Izuku's friends, John Ark, Ejiro Kurishima, Genki Kaminari and Shoto Todoroki, which Blake took notice of their different personalities. Blake saw that Shoto had a habit of being silent most of the time, but his kindness was definitely noticeable, and was a bit of a wisecracker. Though Blake also noted that Shoto wasn't fully aware of most social Ks. John and Denki were definitely the goofballs, though Blake saw that John was a bit more serious and knowledgeable while Denki was a bit more dim-witted for lack of a better word, but his heart is definitely in the right place. As for Kurishima, Blake got a pretty good grasp of his personality within the first few minutes she spent talking to him. He's pretty boisterous and has a 10 for manliness. And to her surprise, Snake ending up becoming her new mentor, and to say he was an improvement over Adam would be an understatement. Snake passed on his skills alongside his training onto the young Faunus girl, which she felt honored by due to Snake's reputation as a warrior and hero. Though Blake was surprised to hear that Snake doesn't see himself as a hero. In his words, Snake sees himself as just a man who's good at what he does, killing and destroying Metal Gears. However, it broke her heart when she found out she was branded as a traitor to the White Fang, knowing it had to be Adam's doing as she fell to her knees while a wave of emotions hit her all at once. The group she was a part of all of her life at that point just turned on her in an instant, and treated like a villain, when Adam is the real villain, as Blake felt rage flowing through her before she was hugged by Izuku. The feeling calmed Blake down as Izuku told her they'd take down the White Fang and Adam the proper way. Blake was thinking about Izuku in her mind when she saw Snake walking over to where she was sitting. Blake, showtime, Snake said, prompting Blake to put her book away before they approached a nearby cliffside, as Snake pulled out his binoculars. You're sure the train will show up? Blake asked, getting a chuckle from Snake. Blake, by now you should know that Otakon's intel is always on point, Snake said, as he playfully hit her shoulder. I'm not doubting his intel. I mean, what if Adam already destroyed the cargo train? Blake asked with a concerned look on her face. And risked destroying everything on board. There's no way he'd be able to get everything he's looking for off the train that fast, Snake said as they saw the train coming towards them, making Blake relieved as the two slide down the cliff before jumping onto the train. Snake noticed a makeshift hatch in the roof of the train car they were on as he opened it, letting him and Blake drop inside, and immediately took notice of all the destroyed Elysian Knights. Seems like he's making this easier for us, Snake quipped as he pulled out his gun, while Blake drawed Gamble's shroud in its gun state. Don't get too cocky, Blake said as the two started making their way through the train, seeing more destroyed Elysian Knights littering the floor as they kept on moving. They made it to a cargo hold as Snake heard noises not too far up from their current position, signifying there's a fight going on as Snake could make out Adam's voice, before he and Blake headed inside the cargo hold. Upon entering, they noticed that Adam had placed charges as Blake saw a massive hole in the other side of the hold, and could see Adam fighting a spider droid. Stay here and deal with the charges, I'll deal with him, Snake instructed as Blake nodded and got to work on defusing the charges, while Snake moved to the other side and saw Adam give the finishing blow to the spider droid. Adam then started moving towards the front of the train as Snake sneaked after him, using the sound of the train moving to hide his presence as Adam entered another train car, right as Snake caught up to Adam and aimed his gun at him. Freeze, Snake ordered as Adam just smirked as he raised his hand, while still holding his weapon. Solid Snake, what an unpleasant surprise. I aim to please. Where's Blake? Adam asked as Snake kept his gun drawn at him. Wouldn't you like to know? Snake said as Adam's sword shot out of its sheath and went towards Snake's face, only for him to dodge the surprise attack before getting kicked by Adam, who jumped backwards to make distance between the two. Snake and Adam started shooting at each other, with Snake playing it smart, and using the environment to his advantage while Adam was fighting aggressively, while also trying to distract Snake long enough to grab his sword. Snake jumped off a crate and tackled Adam into the wall of the car as he kept punching Adam in the face, leaving no room for the renegade Faunus to react before slamming his face into the wall and held his wrist. "Gah-ha! Liquid hits way harder than you do," Adam said with a smug tone as Snake bashed his face against the wall against. "And you picked up Liquid's habit of never knowing when to shut up." Snake quipped as Adam headbutted Snake to make him lose his grip before using a nearby crate to block Snake as he ran to grab his sword, prompting Snake to draw his combat knife. Adam rushed towards Snake as he started swinging his blade at the legendary soldier, only for Snake to dodge and block Adam's strikes with his combat knife, while also getting in some shots as Adam used his sword to block the shots. Adam started jumping around to dodge Snake's gunfire, hoping to be able to pull a fast one on Snake when he has to reload, which quickly came to pass as Snake ran out of ammo, prompting Adam to attack Snake only to be greeted with an empty clip to the face. Adam fell flat on his ass while Snake grabbed a red clip and loaded it into his gun, before Adam quickly got back up and rushed towards Snake, only for him to start dodging fire bullets fired by Snake. Adam then tried to strike Snake with his blade, only for Snake to use CQC to disarm Adam and threw his sword away as he kicked Adam to the ground, before bashing his fist against Adam's face. "You do know you're acting like a creepy obsessed ex-boyfriend with how much you think about Blake, even after branding her a traitor," Snake said as he slammed Adam's face against his knee before throwing him over his shoulder, making Adam winch as he hit the ground. "Shut up, you're the one who turned Blake against me, Snake," Adam yelled as he tried to trip up Snake, only to receive Snake's foot to the face. "My fault. You're the one who sided with Liquid and have wronged and killed who knows how many innocent people, only because you're acting like a child. What did you just call me?" Adam growled at Snake. "You heard me. You think you're justified in terrorizing innocent people, demonizing your own race and making Blake look like the villain, all because you were wrong," Snake said as Adam managed to land a lucky punch on him, before Snake retaliated by throwing multiple punches at Adam, bashing his elbow against Adam's nose before breaking his arm. "Newsflash, asshole, you're far from the only person on Remnant that has suffered. We humans don't have it easy, contrary to what you want to believe," Snake said as Adam tried to crawl towards his sword before his eyes widened beneath his mask when he realized his charges didn't go off. Adam knew he was cornered and pulled out a flare and used it to temporarily blind Snake and Blake as he took the chance to give them the slip. When their sight came back, Snake cursed himself for letting Adam get away before he and Blake took their leave as they grappled towards land. "Well, at least we stopped him from stealing anything from the train," Snake said with a chuckle as he noticed an uneasy look on Blake's face. "You alright, Blake?" Snake asked the Faunus girl, not exactly thrilled about happening the company that played a large part in the suffering of my kind. "That the only reason?" Snake asked as Blake didn't answer the question, which was all Snake needed to hear. "Blake, I know part of you still cares about him, but you know that he'll have to die sooner or later," Snake said as he placed his hand on Blake's shoulder. "I know that, Snake. But the idea of killing someone close to me, I don't think I could handle it," Blake said with a somber tone in her voice as Snake closed his eyes, remembering himself in his younger years, in a bloody fight while holding a makeshift flamethrower, before using it on the person trying to kill him as he opened his eyes. "I never said he has to die by your hand, Blake. Killing might get easier the more you do it, but killing someone very close to you is never easy," Snake said as Blake just nodded before the two began to head back home, while Snake lit up a cigarette which made Blake roll her eyes. "I wonder if Izuku and the others have had a more productive day," Blake said with a little chuckle. "He's probably either off partying with Yang or doing something stupid with the guys," Snake joked as they kept on walking. Meanwhile, Izuku was running around a little arena while holding a paintball gun as he and John bumped into each other. "You get them?" Izuku asked as John shook his head. "Nah, Kiri gave me the slip while Denki thought fast and nearly lured me into a trap," John said as Izuku chuckled a bit. "Least Denki's gotten better at thinking under pressure," Izuku quipped as he and John hear someone sneaking up on them, before quickly turning around and fired their paintball guns at who tried sneaking up on them. "Nice try, Shoto, stealth isn't quite your strong suit," Izuku said with a chuckle as Shoto rolled his eyes and sat down. "Well, not all of us are well trained in guns and stealth, Izuku," Shoto said as Izuku and John both turned around and fired at the ground to keep Denki and Kirishima on their toes, the two trying to jump them. Kirishima ducked behind cover while Denki fell onto the ground, and frantically crawled backwards to find cover, just barely avoiding getting hit. "No fair, guys, we said no teaming up," Denki complained as he stuck his head out from behind cover, only to dodge getting shot again. There are no rules in hell. Izuku yelled out as Denki got back on his feet as he and Kirishima started shooting at Izuku and John, only for them to start jumping all over the place to dodge the shots. Denki started moving around in an attempt to get Izuku and John, however he ended up getting shot in the back by Yang. "Gotcha bitch," Yang said with a smirk as Izuku started firing his paintball gun at Yang, only for her to use Denki as a human shield. "Ow ow ow ow, the hell Yang, I'm already out," Denki shouted out in pain from the paintballs hitting him. "Pay back for getting paint in my hair, jackass," Yang said as she threw Denki at Izuku, who quickly moved out of the way. "I said I was sorry, I wasn't going for the hair," Denki complained as RWBY jumped in, using her semblance to her advantage as Kirishima tried to get RWBY while John grabbed Denki's paintball gun and ducked behind cover. RWBY kept dashing around while John started firing at her and Kirishima while Izuku and Yang had their little shootout, as Kirishima was getting dizzy while tracking RWBY while dodging fire from John. After a while, Kirishima fell onto the ground due to getting very dizzy and got shot in the back by John before he and Izuku were back to back with each other. Izuku and John both winked at each other as they switched positions as John started firing at Yang while Izuku tried to cut RWBY off. After a while, the four cornered each other before shooting each other with their paintball guns, with Izuku and John being the winners as they all chuckled and hugged it out, before heading to Izuku's place. After cleaning up, they all relaxed in the living room as they turned on the TV and got some snacks. "Man, that was awesome, we need to play paintball more often," Kirishima said as he and Izuku fist bumped. "Oh definitely, just minus getting paint in my hair," Yang said while glaring at Denki as he awkwardly laughed and shivered in fear. "I said I was sorry Yang, I slipped and misfired," Denki said sheepishly while trying not to make it obvious he was scared. "Dude, you always go for that excuse," John said as Neo sat on the couch, right beside Izuku. "John's right Denki, you do resort to that excuse all the time," Neo said as Denki held his head down while Neo rested her head on Izuku's shoulder, making RWBY and Yang slightly jealous. "Oh, lighten up man. We're just busting your chops," Kirishima said as he smiled and wrapped his arm around Denki's shoulder, making Denki smile and laugh it off. Izuku smiled at Neo and patted her head, making her smile as the door opened as Inko walked inside while holding groceries. "I'm home," Inko said as she closed the door, before Izuku and John got up and helped Inko with the groceries which made her smile and ruffle their hair. "Something held you up mom, doesn't take you that long to get groceries," Izuku asked his mom as he and John sat back down. "Ran into a dust robbery. Managed to stop any dust from getting stolen but the guy in charge managed to get away," Inko explained before sitting down in a chair as Raiden walked downstairs. "He should be thanking his lucky stars I wasn't there," Raiden joked as he kissed Inko on the cheek, making Izuku fake gag. "I swear, you two do this on purpose," Izuku mumbled as Inko and Raiden chuckled, right as Otakon came downstairs. "Did you get a look of the guy Inko? That should help us know who to look out for." "Yeah, I did. He had orange hair, dark green eyes, bangs covering his right eye, has black eyeliner on his left eye. He was wearing a white suit and a black bowler hat, and he had a cane," Inko said as Otakon hoped on his computer, and used Inko's description to find whoever it is she encountered, which didn't take too long. "This him?" Otakon asked as he showed Inko his computer screen. "Yeah, is it?" Inko said as Otakon continued doing some research. "His name's Roman Torchwick and, holy hell, someone's being flirting with the wrong side of the law," Otakon said as the others got up and all looked at all of Roman's crimes. "More like he's been sleeping with the wrong side of the law, just look how long the dude's rap sheet is," Raiden said in shock at the long list of Roman's crimes. "I'm surprised he dresses nicely," Neo said as Izuku and the others looked at her in confusion. "Seriously Neo, that's the part you're focusing on?" Izuku asked while John had a serious look on his face. "Well, you wouldn't expect common criminals to dress fancy, since it's not really practical, and it's basically making easy for people to identify you," Neo explained as the others all agreed she had a pretty good point. "Should definitely let the others know to be on the lookout for him," Otakon said as they all nodded. "Be on the lookout for who?" Snake asked as they all turned around to see Snake and Blake walk through the front door, as Otakon gave Snake a brief summary. That matches something I heard about a gentleman criminal a few weeks ago. Though I didn't take it seriously, since who in their right mind would commit crimes in fancy clothing? Might as well be wearing a neon sign that says I'm a criminal at that point," Snake said as he grabbed a drink from the fridge as the kids all sat back down around the TV. Blake sat down with Izuku as he ruffled her hair, before Blake removed her bow and placed it on the table. "How'd it go Blake?" RWBY asked while she was snacking on a cookie. Went fine more or less. What did you guys do? Blake asked, seeing Izuku and John had smirks. Had a game of paintball, which me and John won, Izuku said with confidence as Denki, Kirishima and Shoto rolled their eyes. Only because you guys teamed up when we all agreed not to, Shoto said as Blake just chuckled. You guys agreed to no teaming up while me, Izuku, RWBY and Yang didn't. Plus, like Izuku said, there are no rules during battle, John said as the three rolled their eyes as Blake handed Izuku something. What's this, Blake? Izuku asked as he looked at what she gave him. I figured I'd get you something, Blake said with a faint blush on her face as Izuku opened her gift, and saw she had gotten him a pair of dark green sunglasses. Blake, you didn't have to. Well, seeing those reminded me of you, plus you and Yang can match, Blake said, as Izuku smiled and tried on the glasses. They look great, thanks Blake, Izuku said as both Blake and Yang hugged him, making Izuku blush a bit. They're both so close to me, Izuku thought to himself as he hugged them both back, as Snake, Raiden and Otakon all chuckled to themselves. Oh, Izuku's going to be very popular with the girls at Beacon, Raiden thought to himself as he grabbed a beer from the fridge. The sun was shining bright upon the planet as Snake was in the middle of doing some customizing on his gun while Raiden was cleaning his sword. Solidus was doing some maintenance on his suit. Otakon and Naomi were doing some research right as Tai walked in, wearing a tie-dye shirt, and tried to get his friend's attention. Snake and Solidus rolled their eyes as they kept doing what they were doing while Tai kept trying to getting their attention, clearing his throat as Otakon turned around in his chair. We get it, Tai, you're in a tie-dye shirt. Really funny, Otakon said before turning back around to continue his research as Tai just pouted. You guys don't appreciate comedy. Tai mumbled as he walked to the kitchen to grab something to drink due to the heat outside. No, Tai, we do appreciate comedy, as long as it doesn't want us to go permanently deaf. Snake quipped as he continued working on his gun while Tai pouted. Even now I'm still not used to Tai's attempts at comedy, Naomi said to Otakon as they kept on working. Oh, it's way worse whenever both Tai and Yang start making bad jokes and puns together. One time on a camping trip a few years ago, Tai and Yang managed to make exactly 1,000 puns and bad jokes in the span of a day. Otakon explained to Naomi as her jaw dropped. It got so bad to the point I started drinking just so I could get any sleep. Yes, I ended up nursing a hangover the next day, but it was totally worth it. Otakon explained as Naomi was just flabbergasted at the thought of Otakon being drunk. And now you know why we always suggest to keep a pair of earmuffs on you at all times. Raiden joked as Tai held his head down. You guys suck, Tai said as Snake chuckled a bit while shaking his head. Hey, you had riz up half your team somehow, am I right? Snake joked with a smug smile, before Raiden punched his shoulder while giving him a look that told him to read the room. Alright, per timing. Snake said while Naomi was confused by the sudden tension in the room as they heard a knock on the door, as Snake got up and answered the door. Oh, hello Nizu. Snake said as he greeted the small rat man. Hello David, mind if I come in? Nizu asked as Snake motioned for him to come in, which Nizu did before sitting down. So, to what do we owe this visit, Nizu? Raiden asked as he finished cleaning his sword before placing it back in its sheath. Well, you all know that the school year at Beacon will start in a few days. And might I say, Jack, your son absolutely crushed the entrance exam, Nizu said, which made Raiden smile with lots of pride. That's my boy, we trained him well. Anyway, I get the feeling you're not here just to tell me how well my kid did, Raiden said as Nizu just chuckled at Raiden's response. Of course not. You see, Jack, Osmond finally decided to take my advice to have more staff at Beacon, and I wanted to ask you and David if you two would like to teach at Beacon. Nizu said as Snake and Raiden were both surprised at Nizu's offer. Us, teaching at Beacon? Why, Snake asked as Otakon placed his hand on his best friend's shoulder. Well, I figured who'd be best to teach the next generation of warriors than Remnant's two greatest and strongest soldiers, Nizu explained to the two as Snake and Raiden looked at each other for a moment, both being on the same wavelength before looking back at Nizu. We'll do it, on 4 conditions. First, Otakon gets to be my teaching assistant. Second, this is more directed at Osmond than you, but Raiden and I have to be in the know at all times, no lies. Third, anything connected to Liquid is ours to deal with. And fourth, I can get at least 2 smoke breaks a day, Snake said as Raiden, Otakon, Naomi and Tai all face-palmed at Snake's final condition. You have yourselves a deal, Nizu said before shaking Snake and Raiden's hands. Meanwhile, Izuku, John, Shoto, Denki, Kirishima, Neo, RWBY, Blake and Yang were playing baseball. Yang was pitching, Denki was pitching while Izuku was the catcher as Yang threw the ball, only for Denki to miss the ball. "Whoa," Izuku said as the others all started laughing before he threw the ball back to Yang. "You call that pitching?" Denki shouted to Yang, who was also laughing as he got back into the batting position. "Get him a tennis racket, maybe he'll hit it this time," Neo joked from left field, further adding to the laughter. "We aren't playing tennis, Yang. Give me something I can hit." "Alright, Sparky, this is my heater, I dare you to hit it," Yang said as Denki kept his eye on the ball. "You'll be sorry," Denki said as Yang put some heat into her pitch and threw the ball, and this time Denki managed to hit the ball as RWBY ran to catch the ball as fast as she could with her semblance, and managed to catch it before it hit the ground, much to her delight. "Great catch, RWBY," Yang said with a smile as Denki held his head down. "No fair, RWBY has super speed, and she and Yang have some stupid sibling connection going on," Denki complained as he handed the bat to John, while Shoto looked down at the ground for a moment before getting his head back into the game. "Hey, you insisted it'd be more fun playing with quirks and semblances, so this is on you, dude," John said before Yang threw the ball, as John hit the ball with all he had, getting a home run in the process as John ran across all the bases. "Oh, the ladies at Beacon better be careful, otherwise they'll all be weak in the knees when they see you, John," Yang joked while John just rolled his eyes, as they all took a break from playing. "You're sounding like my mom and sisters right now, Yang. I'm not really looking for romance or anything like that," John said before they all sat down while Kirishima passed Izuku the ball, before he sat down. "Besides, it's more likely that they will have to be careful around you girls," John said as Yang, RWBY, Blake and Neo all faintly blushed at what he said. "Well, it's possible that some girls would want to take advantage of Izuku's kindness and compassion, so it's only natural we'd want to keep him safe, especially Yang," RWBY explained as John didn't buy it one bit, but didn't go any further out of decency for his friends. "The big day is coming very soon, guy. Us all going to Beacon," Kirishima said as he, Shoto and Izuku all fist bumped. "And no doubt Izuku absolutely blew everyone's scores out of the water," Kirishima said as he playfully hit Izuku's shoulder, while Izuku just rubbed the back of his head. "I doubt I did that good, I just followed what I was told. Besides, I'm sure you guys all did great too," Izuku said as everyone just smiled and chuckled at Izuku's modesty. "Yeah, because of your smarts and skills, Izuku. Well, Mom, Dad, Uncle Crow, your dad, Snake, Solidus and Cinder also helped us with our training, but you did most of the heavy lifting," Yang said as Izuku blushed at her compliments. Meanwhile, a girl with white hair and blue eyes was in the middle of brushing up on her appearance, as she looked at herself in a mirror. Her name is Weiss Schnee. Having been accepted into Beacon Academy a few days ago, Weiss has pleased she had been accepted, but she was sad about having to leave her mother and older sister. But at the same time, she was more than glad to be as far away from her father and brother as possible. Weiss smiled at herself as she could faintly overhear an argument between her mother and father, mostly like about her attending Beacon, which her father was very unhappy with, but Weiss did not care one bit about what her so-called father thought. After a bit, the argument ceased as Weiss turned to see her door open and saw her mother, Willow, walk into her room. "Are you alright, mother?" Weiss asked as she gave her a hug, which Willow happily accepted without hesitation. "More or less, darling," Willow said as she placed her hand on her daughter's cheek. "I'm so proud of you, Weiss. Growing up so fast, it's enough to make me cry," Willow said as Weiss just chuckled before breaking off the hug. "Were you arguing with him about my attendance to Beacon again?" Weiss asked, slightly curious to the subject of the argument. "Not entirely. I found out that Shock was trying to convince General Ironwood to create a Metal Gear, along with lots of different weapons of mass destruction," Willow explained to her daughter, her voice filled with lots of disdain for her husband, while Weiss was just flabbergasted. "You'd think he'd understand that a Metal Gear is immediately bad news, especially after the disaster with Peace Walker 12 years ago that led to Metal Gear development being outlawed. But then again, that bastard only cares about money and nothing else," Willow said as Weiss patted her mother on the back, in an attempt to make her feel better. "Well, at least on the bright side, that bastard won't be a problem for us soon, right, mother?" Weiss asked, knowing that Willow planned on divorcing Jacques and taking back control of the Schnee Dust Company from him, and hopefully try to undo all the misery and pain he had caused. "You're right, my little snow angel," Willow said as she gave Weiss another hug. "I won't let you and Winter down, mother, I promise." "I know, darling, I know." That's it, guys. Until the author add more chapters. Take care.